Hi guys, today I'm going to show you a couple of pretty good Zurgo games I had. This game I'm facing Oloro. So control decks rather should be my toughest matchup with Zurgo. So let's see how this one goes. I have one land in my hand and land tax. I'm also going first, so it's a little bit of a risky keep, but I also have Mox Time, so I know that next turn I can just put that down with land tax. Or sorry, the turn after rather. So, go land tax. He blessedly does nothing. So I don't have a land to put down, so it's a pretty easy decision for me what to do. He puts a land down, does nothing, and I go for 3 lands here. So I get to put down a land, I get to put down Mox Diamond, and I was a little bit afraid of a counter here, but he had passed priority. I know he passed priority because when I put Mox Diamond down, there was no checks for his priority. So I put Phyrexian Arena down. Puts Mana Vault down. Then Jace. I wasn't too worried about the Jace. Maybe I should have been a little more, but he's already down to 4 cards, and I have a full grip at this point. So go for more land. The only land in my deck. I'm actually going to take land tax out after this. And I top deck Chaos Warp, which is not bad. It changes my game plan a little bit. So I put down. Sorry, I thought Seize just to see if he could counter. Now he had Demonic Tutor in his hand, and he had another. He had 2 more lands, and then he had something that transmuted for 2, I believe. So I Chaos Warp his Chase, and he gets a land off it, and I discard a land here. It was a pretty tough call on what to discard, but at this point, Zurgo doesn't really need a lot of land to get going. I'm not going to discard my tutors, and I wanted to keep Elspeth in case he got rid of Bitter Blossom, so I could actually use Smokestack to effect. So he uses his Dimir Infiltrator to search up Limduel's Vault, which is a pretty good play. I don't bother using land tax. I know I don't have any more land on my deck. Top deck a land and Sword to Plowshare. So put a land down. Borrow Signet. And then I put out my Elspeth here. Get a +1. I just wanted to create. I didn't have enough mana to put down Bitter Blossom, my Signet, and my Smokestack in one turn. So I just put down my bigger guy first, so I could start generating 1/1s to sack the Smokestack. He puts down Limduel's Vault. Takes him a little while. Alright, he's happy with what he got at 31 life. I think he took a little more than 10 life there. So he went for Austere Command. Austere Command is a pretty good play. I'm glad I didn't put Bitter Blossom down there or Smokestacks before. But you got rid of my Phyrexian Arena, my land tax, which you can't use, Mox Diamond, and Boros Signet. Saying that, it could have been a lot worse. I mean, if he had gone for a Mind Twist, I don't know how I could have recovered from that. But luckily he didn't. So it's my turn. He's tapped out, so I put down Smokestack and start hitting him. Now I'm pretty confident at this point. He had 1 card in hand. He's drawing a card here, so I was fairly certain I can get him under Smokestack. But he Detention Spheres it. And on my upkeep, I tutored for the wrong thing. Vandal Blast. Still not too worried. So I put my general down to start putting some pressure on him. He may have put Oloro down as a blocker, but I have Swords of Plowshare for that, and he still only has one card in his hand. So he's got to find an answer. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I also had a tutor in my hand too, so once again I wasn't too afraid. So I'm going to hit him. On his turn, he puts down Gilded Lotus, which I sort of happy I drew that Vandal Blast by mistake. He didn't have anything to play with Gilded Lotus, and I'm still wondering what that extra card is. Maybe he's just drawing land, I don't know. But here, a Wasteland is land, just to see. I just want to see what he has. And it looked like it was a good play, because he returns a permanent to my hand, and I lose 3 life. So he was obviously planning to use that when I attacked, but I forced the issue there. So, what do? Play my general. I Vandal Blast Gilded Lotus, so he has 0 cards in hand, and 5 mana. I attack. He draws, and concedes. So we go to game 2. So he's going first again. My first draw was unkeepable, unfortunately. I really needed another land there, and it would have been pretty good, but my Caverner Souls, it's colorless, and it just wasn't serviceable. So I go back, and I get 2 lands and a Boros Signet, Steel Shaper's Gift. It's okay. I mean, there's a long-term plan there with Karn, so I keep it. I wouldn't say it's a great hand, but anyways, he goes first. Puts down a Scry land. I just pop my land right away. Like I said, this deck relies on very few resources, so I'm not too worried about not getting a land for a couple turns here. Okay, Liliana from the top. Down Signet. Now I noticed on my turn when I put down Signet, he had not passed priority completely, so I'm guessing he had a counter in his hand. And he just passes. He didn't drop a land there. So I try to bait him out with Liliana. Liliana at this point would probably hurt me more than it would hurt him when I +1 it. But he uses 2 cards in his hand, or he uses Force of Will to get rid of it, and he exiles Ashiok. So I'm pretty pleased that he took 2 cards to get rid of Liliana. Here's turn. Gets Lotus Bloom out, sacks it, puts down Jace again. So I drew Soul Ring off the top, which is not bad at all. Bitter Blossom, I was afraid he was going to counter that too, but he doesn't. He had passed priority at that point. He taps out to Detention Spirit, which I think is really good. I think he, I don't know what he has in his hand, but he basically just tapped out to stop preventing 1/1s. And if there's any deck that would be resistant to Bitter Blossom until they find an answer, it would be Oloro. Maybe he was worried about his Jace, but I was representing 5 mana on the board, and I had enough to bring out my commander. So my turn to drop a land, and that is exactly what I do. I take out Jace. A lot of times I'll ignore Planeswalkers when I have Zurgo, but you can't ignore card draw. I mean, I've seen so many games people lose just because their opponent draws cards and they couldn't care less. So we strip mines away at Badlands. I don't really care. Then he kills Zurgo. I cared a little about that, but it got another card out of his hand, so it's not too bad. And I still have a play. So I put out Elspeth. Get a 1/1. Draws 2, loses 2 life. I feel like this guy's tapping out a lot in his turn, which is nice because that's the only time that I'll play my cards. Now, I draw Pyroblast here. Pyroblast is obviously specifically for blue decks. I'm pretty happy to see it. Nothing makes me feel more safe than a counter in my hand, and largely an unexpected counter. I go for Sword and Feast and Famine here. It took a long time for me to decide whether to go for Feast and Famine and or Fire and Ice, but I decided to go for Feast and Famine here to start knocking some cards out of his hand. I'm pretty content sitting on my Pyroblast, and if I get a couple more mana, I can just put a Karn down. So I put Feast and Famine on the battlefield. I equip it. I attack. Then I get mana for my counter magic. So here he doesn't do anything. I couldn't be happier. I just drew Path to Exile. Oloro decks don't usually run a lot of creatures, so they don't do too much, but whenever I want to push through that Zurgo, I have some insurance. I attack. He discards Iona, which I think is a little bit greedy to have in a Oloro deck. He transmutes for Talisman of Dominance. Not much I can say about that. You can see here he actually did transmute for Talisman of Dominance. I mean, he could have gone for Mana Drainer, Cyclonic Rift, or anything really. So he might have had something big in his hand that he was trying to get to. I don't really care. I do Wrath of God, and just once again attack here, getting some cards out of his hand. So I think at this point, Sword and Feast and Famine was a pretty good choice, considering his deck isn't doing much, and I'm just punishing him for it. I'm not really getting his life down because of Oloro, but I'm just waiting for another land here. So he Oblivion Rings my Elspeth. Now, I think he just misread the threat here. As I said in previous videos, I think when you drop a Planeswalker, your opponent changes their game plan to get rid of it or to hit it, and this is a perfect example of that. I'm getting him to discard one card a turn with Sword and Feast and Famine, and yes, I can ultimate Elspeth next turn and have all my things become indestructible, but that shouldn't really matter. I think indestructible is largely overrated in Commander. Sure, it wins games, but you can say that about so many things. So he decides to go for Elspeth, and I couldn't be happier. I thought for sure he's going to go for Sword and Feast and Famine. I would start losing some advantage here, because basically he was drawing 0 a turn, and I was drawing 1 a turn by me just hitting his hand the entire time. It was a great situation. So he takes out Elspeth. And I draw a land. So once again, I'm feeling pretty confident. Now, here I draw up Karn, and this was to get a counter out of his hand again, because I wanted to draw up Zurgo and start hitting him for lethal. I think I needed to do 14 more damage to him, but he didn't have a counter, so I minus it on Oblivion Ring. Now, the smart play would have been to go for his hand, but I figured because he went for Elspeth, he probably thought that was a bigger threat, and it got him to concede. So that was that game.